Hello everyone, welcome back to PC Species. Today we are talking about FSR 4. Now we did a decent enough video about the 9070 and 9070 XT and things were looking good. So now we are going to talk about the second aspect that is related to those cards, and that is FSR 4. Before we start, if I'm not looking as hot as I usually do, it's just because I'm slightly under the weather. So please bear with me for that. Other than that, before we start, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot. Now, let us move on. So, the first thing I'd like to inform you of is that FSR 4 is exclusive to RDNA 4. It will only work on the latest AMD graphics cards. So, that is because FSR uses ML powered upscaling. So, that is AI, machine learning, and that requires actual hardware bits that are only available on the latest graphics cards, the RDNA 4 series, that is. So it is going to be exclusive to RDNA 4, FSR 3 and any later version, probably 3.1 or anything, that would be available for the older cards as well, and the support will be continued. So this is the first thing that I wanted to talk about. Now for this time they're using upscaling, FrameGen, anti-lag. So all of these things you get. Now I'm not very excited about FrameGen because, you know, and do you want, whether you want to call them fake frames or whatever, I am personally not a big fan, but for those who are, we have benchmarks provided by AMD for that as well. But this time around for this video, we'll mostly focus on the upscaling aspect because that is where we are seeing a massive improvement. So let us move on. So this is a screenshot that was shared by AMD and it is from Space Marine. Now, if you take a look at this, this is the native 4K image. So you see that the details are, already there since it's a native image. Now, AMD FSR 3.1 performance mode and AMD FSR 4 performance mode. Now, one thing AMD could have done here is they could have been sneaky. They could have simply used the performance mode for FSR 3.1 or balanced or quality for FSR 4 to make themselves look better, but they didn't. So performance mode for both of them. If you take a look at the AMD FSR 3.1 image, there are a lot of details missing. So these little connecting wires or whatever the heck, then there's this tower thing that is not very clear and the image is all garbled. But if you move on to FSR 4, the details are actually very well preserved and the image looks actually pretty good. This foliage as well and everything. So based on this, FSR 4 in terms of upscaling has actually moved forward a lot. Now this is 4K performance with FSR 4, Fidelity FX Super Resolution 4. So again, now this is with FrameGen, so I'm not a big fan of this. The 7900 GRE that the card is being compared against is running native 4K, and then this is with FrameGen and all of the hoopla on. So 4.4 times 4x. Now this is more like those NVIDIA charts that they showed, and they showed it as performance gains. At least they're mentioning that this is with FSR 4. In NVIDIA's case, it was only in the footnotes. So you had to be really careful with that. Now, we have a video that AMD shared. Now, obviously, we do not get press material since we are not as big a channel, but we tried to capture some of the footage from AMD's presentation, and that is what we are going to show you here. So this is Call of Duty Black Ops 6. This is native 4K. This is FSR. Now they are going to zoom in on the glove. Now, this is what I want to talk about. So this is the native image. Look at the edge of the glove. It looks much better, much more defined. In this case, the line is not very well defined. And if you take a look at the stairs as well, you can see a fair bit of garbling. But what used to happen with FSR 3.1, this is still much better than that. And then FPS are 3 times again. This is with FrameGen. So not a big fan of that. We are only going to talk in terms of picture quality. So overall, FSR 4 image quality is looking pretty good. Now, this is an interesting one. This is Ratchet and Clank, and I want to point out this particular scene. So this is supposed to be the native 4K image, and this is the upscaled one with FSR 4. Now, instead of being the other way around, if you take a look at the native image, the grass or whatever foliage or whatever you want to call it here is not very well defined, whereas with FSR 4, it looks much more defined. Now, what I feel might have happened here is that these images got swapped somehow, but when we move on with the video, you'll see that that is not the case. But this is actually quite interesting to see that in the native image, there's not a lot of detail, and with FSR 4 there is a fair bit of detail. You can take a look at it here as well. If you compare it to this one, this looks much more detailed. Now this is what I was talking about. So native 4K, you can see some bit of the fur, and here it is totally smoothed out. So this looks more like FSR, but in the previous image, the FSR upscaled image was actually looking better than the native 4K image. Alright, so we are going to move on with it. Now they show this particular grab from Space Marine, and to me this looks quite alright. I was not able to find any particular problems with the image. So based on this, FSR 4 is looking decent, more than decent. We'll know more about it once we get to test it actually, and that is not going to happen for a while, because again we are not going to get the review cards or anything of that sort, but we'll just talk about it based on what we have. So for now, FSR is supported in 30 plus games at launch, and 75 plus are planned by the end of 2025. So they're pushing it hard enough as well. Now for the games in which FSR 4 is not supported, they have something called AMD Hyper RX. Now if you watched the NVIDIA presentation and if you read the supported material as well, with DLSS 4 they said that there's a feature in the driver in the NVIDIA app called DLSS override that lets you use some features of DLSS even in the games that do not support it natively. It's the same thing with AMD Hyper RX. You get features like super resolution, sharpen effect, fluid motion, super resolution, anti-lag, all of these things, and this can be enabled within the Adrenaline driver, and this will be supported in games that do not natively support FSR 4. So AMD is claiming that this is going to be supported properly in at least 1000 plus games. So again, we'll get to see that once we actually have the data on that. Now this is another thing that they wanted to show. So with DLSS, with this frame gen and all of that, a lot of people were concerned about the latency. Now latency depends on the native, the actual rendered frame rate. But like NVIDIA did with Reflex 2, or trying to do with Reflex 2, AMD is doing that with anti-lag too. They're claiming 8.5 millisecond response time in Apex Legends and a reduction of up to 42%. Now this is the reduced number. 42%, no, they're not going to reduce 42% in this. This is the result. This is the actual result. All right. So we have this. Now with FSR 4, there's something else that I'd like to show you. Now this is a video from Hardware Unboxed. I'm going to link it in the description as well. They attended CES where AMD actually showcased FSR 4 in Ratchet and Clank properly. Now in this video, we'll take a look at FSR 3.1. Now if you take a look at the carpet, you can see the image is not stable at all. There's shimmering everywhere, there's trailing in these particles, this confetti and all of that. There's a lot of it. Now, when you move on to FSR 4, you're going to see that the image is going to be much more stable and much smoother. Now, again, it is not as sharp as the native image, but still it looks much better than the garbled mess that FSR 3.1 was. And again, we are going to take a look at the confetti as well. We'll take a look. You'll keep an eye out for trailing and all of that. And it does seem to be doing a much better job. So FSR 4 actually seems to be a sizable improvement over the FSR 3.1. Now, obviously it is still not going to catch up with DLSS 4 in a day or two, but still it is good to see AMD making a lot of progress. So with FSR, I have a couple of videos more. Now this one is Monster Hunter Wilds, and this is their ray tracing showcase. Now there's one thing I want to point out in this video, but first let's take a look at it. This is ray tracing off, this is the ray tracing on. Now keep an eye on the top left image, whatever that mountain looking thing is. This, you see this, and now it goes black. So I'm not really sure if it's an issue with the draw distance or maybe global illumination or some problem of that sort, which is making it do this. So I'm not really sure what this is, but then again, this is seemingly a smaller problem. I'm just pointing it out, which, you know, when I saw the video, I noticed it. So I thought I'll share it with you guys as well. Now, if some of you remember, AMD did a showcase in old days when they wanted to showcase their graphics card, they did a video called the Toy Shop. Now they have done that again. Now this is in no way related to the older video, but this one is meant to showcase their progress with ray tracing and all of that. Now there were some problems that I noticed in this video as well, and I'm going to take you along for the ride and point out wherever I see a problem. Now take a look at this. There's a fair bit of shimmering in the shadows on the drawing of that little girl. You see this? This is there. Then they are going to showcase 1 million dynamic lights and all of that. Path ray tracing, restir, NRC, that is noise reduction, neural super sampling, denoiser. Okay. So now if you take a look at the shadow of this particular illuminated doll-like thing, I'm not really sure. See? You see this? The image is not stable still, but this is not too big. This should not be a deal breaker at all, but there are going to be some more things. Now, if you take a look at the shadow, the reflection of the lights on the table, you're going to see that they are shimmering as well. The image is not steady. And again, take a look at this corner here. So there are some problems still with FSR 4. Now, ray tracing is a fairly heavy workload. So it is not going to be perfect, but still, if you compare it to FSR 3.1, there's a lot of improvement. And in terms of ray tracing as well, AMD has come a long way. There's going to be a few more problems. Now, you can see the robots, the little robot's hand, leaving trails. Slight bit of ghosting. You see that? Yeah, I'm going to show you that again because I missed it too. Here. So you see, these are some of the problems that are going to be there because again, AMD is still playing catch up when it comes to ray tracing, when it comes to DLSS, upscaling technologies. AMD is still playing catch up. What makes me really happy is that they've come a long way. They're making progress. So far, RDNA 4 has been mostly positive apart from the pricing of the 9070. It has been mostly positive. The graphics cards look good. FSR 4 is looking good, and they have made major strides in ray tracing as well. So for now, things are looking really good, and that is a good thing for us gamers because when there is competition in the market, we are going to get the benefit of it. What used to happen in the olden days was the split between AMD and Nvidia used to be 55-45, and now it is 90% Nvidia, 10% AMD, and maybe even less. That gives Nvidia the monopoly over the market, and they can dictate the terms, the pricing and all of that. And to some extent, the current pricing of the RTX 50 series cards is a result of that. So saying all that, competition is good for us gamers. So up to this point, AMD has done a decent enough job. Now let us see what the actual price of these cards is going to be, and that is what we'll base our verdict on. But so far, it is all looking good. In all likelihood, our next video is going to be the review of the RTX 5070 and then the review and the pricing of the 9070 and 9070 XT. So if you like the content, please consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video. It helps us a lot. And for the most part, it will help us in not, just snagging these videos off of their own presentation. Maybe they'll consider us big enough to send us the media material. But this is it for now, and we'll see you in the next one.